Welcome to Unsilent with your hosts Dave and Brian. This is not another current events podcast. We are digging deeper, diagnosing, and discussing what's really going on today, how we got here, and providing observations for future generations.
Welcome to Unsilent. We're Brian and Dave. Let us know where you think we got it right and where you think we completely messed it up. You can do that by visiting unsilentpodcast.com, Rumble, YouTube, or all the various social channels where you can become enlightened about the current events of today. And there are current events, aren't there? There's plenty of current events.
Yeah. So a new wrinkle this week. We don't get to start the podcast declaring another victory in Iran. That there was no
Right.
victory declared this week. In fact, we kind of just said, yeah, we're not really doing that anymore.
Well, we did say that if Oman didn't get their act together, we're going to bomb the S out of them, so there's that. I mean, I think maybe probably we should, I don't know, pick some other friends in the Middle East to bomb too. Let's just start, bombing a variety of people. I think we do it except for running out of bombs.
Yeah. And depending on which reports you listen to, I mean, who knows what you can trust. So, but I've heard estimates that we've used 45% of our Patriot missiles or interceptor missiles or both or whatever it was. I was mentioning to you before we started recording that I've seen some pictures of the food they're serving the sailors on the carriers, and it's it literally makes like your junior high or high school cafeteria food look like fine cuisine. It's
nasty.
It looks like prison food. I mean, worse than prison food. I've never been to prison, but I've seen pictures. So no victory this week, but we did kind of say, yeah, we're just kind of sort of doing that, and we're gonna starve them out over the long run. Our new strategy is gonna be I don't know, Besant had some name for it. I don't know, the super whatever plan for financial doom, economic fury. That's what it was.
Economic fury. Well, there is the one thing that I did find interesting is that the UAE, who is Tehran, has two basic allies that keep them, economically alive. One of them is China and one of them is UAE. And UAE actually came out, I think it was today, and said that they were essentially not necessarily declaring war, but they were essentially rebelling against Iran. And if they go away, then, the whole idea of, that the U.S. has had of, well, we're going to starve them out was never real because you had China and you had the United Arab Emirates. But if the UAE does actually go away, like some of these news reports are saying, that could be an actual serious issue for them. Now, again, who knows what it'll take to break them. And, they can, I'm sure they've got stockpiles of food someplace, but but it is an interesting contingency if the UAE decides to back off from supporting Iran.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, in other news, since we can't declare another victory this week, we'll have to. I mean, and it breaks our streak, though. That's the thing that's really
it's like
here.
a Snapchat streak. Yeah, we had this Snapchat streak, and it's gone.
So we'll have to keep that down the road. Okay. So in other news, did you see that we removed cannabis as it's no longer a Schedule 1 drug?
Oh, is that right?
It's now a Schedule 3 drug.
Oh, I'll be right back, Brian. I'm gonna go get some. No, I didn't see that. I mean, it's interesting.
So this has been, I mean, I can remember in junior high, which, 1990-ish, people talking about, actually, I guess it was junior high and earlier than that, a little bit earlier than that. But this has been a idea for 40, 60, whatever years.
Yeah.
And it was always kind of a prickly topic. I think that by and large, legislators were like, they didn't really care probably, but they didn't want the appearance that they were pro-drug, I think. Because we, in the midst of the quote unquote war on drugs.
Just say no.
Drugs soundly defeated us, I would say.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt. Yeah, no doubt.
I did also, by the way, a little side note here. Whenever we declare on war on something that's an abstract idea, like the war on terrorism, the war on drugs, we get our asses handed to us 100% of the time.
Yeah, exactly. There's nobody to kill.
We have to take our fury out on them.
Yeah. I mean, at least with Iran, we got some people to shoot at. With the war on drugs, what are you going to do? I mean, it's kind of tough.
So anyhow, 40, 50, 60 years in the making, whatever. I don't know if it was executive order. I don't remember a law being passed, but I think it was executive order where it
Yeah.
was removed from Schedule 1. It's now a Schedule 3 drug. Um, I think there's certainly pros and cons to that. It seems kind of silly, in my opinion, to have people locked away for decades for
Yeah. Oh yeah.
selling marijuana. That seems a
Yeah.
little silly. On the other hand, I'm not exactly excited about them selling it, cross street from the school, but in an era where the government is bringing drag queens to read for story hour, I don't know which is worse. So
Yeah.
I guess I don't. It's not even
Well,
that's not even a thought anymore.
yeah, I mean, yeah, that's like when they made marijuana legal in Washington state. On one hand, I'm very libertarian about a lot of things like that. I'm like, if you're going to hurt yourself, knock yourself out. It's none of my business. On the flip side of that, there's been some serious increases in drunk driving, and intoxicated driving,
Yeah.
and other things of other social ills that have happened as a result of that. So, yeah, I mean, and certainly there's no question that marijuana should not be a federally, something where you're throwing people in prison for. It's just like, I'm sympathetic towards the argument about, well, whiskey versus marijuana, yeah, marijuana is worse. Okay, I'll grant you that. But, in terms of the degrees and things, it's not cocaine, it's not fentanyl, it's not heroin, that type of thing. So it's
Yeah,
so
and I
I
think it like what is quote unquote worse. I think it depends on what you're looking at. I don't ever remember hearing very many stories of a guy getting high on marijuana and beating up his wife.
yeah,
Whatever, where
yeah.
you hear with alcohol, things like
Well,
that.
that's
Like
true. Yeah.
again, it depends on the lens you're looking through for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Also, not to get too distracted in a different direction here, but as more and more information unfolds about the Iran-Contra affair and what the CIA was doing to make money because Congress wouldn't fund what they
Sure.
wanted to do,
So they need to make
and
money.
so they got entrepreneurial and started funding themselves
Hmm.
through various mechanisms, which by all accounts seems to be including the sale of drugs,
Yeah, yeah.
specifically crack cocaine and things
Sure.
like that. Um, it's kind of hard to say we're gonna put people in prison for decades for selling marijuana, but our own government can sell crack. That
Yeah.
seems kind of an odd
Well,
position to take.
yeah, and I think we're decades past the time where we can think about consistency in terms of federal government. I mean, but see, that does bring up an interesting point. I was reading some stuff about the idea about blackpilling, the idea that everything is going to hell in a handbasket, and all our institutions, everything. There's no doubt, or that America is uniquely evil in the world, like the Hassan Pikers of the world. I've been listening to a lot of Hassan Piker on YouTube. I don't know how I don't know how he got on my algorithm. Maybe because I watched one of his not campaign, but one of his speeches at somebody else's campaign, and now all I see is Hassan Piker on my YouTube channel. And there's one of the dangers of the time is recognizing, or is throwing the baby out with the bathwater. The whole idea of blackpilling, which is like, there's no doubt that going back, I mean, even to the time of the founders, that there was, you could call them inconsistencies if you want to be nice about it, but there's evil that governments have done, and the U.S. is no exception to that. We've done plenty of, especially with our foreign interventions in various places, and the CIA has got lots of documentation about things that they've done, and I mean, I was talking to a gal from, where is she from? Guatemala, I think it was, and we were talking about CIA interventions in South America, and because she moved to the U.S. from there, and so she's very, very, very far left, and so she and I were having this good conversation. She knows that I'm conservative, and she's far left, and she was talking about, oh, and your government did this and this and this, and I'm like, yeah, I know and she said, but in all fairness, our governments are all worse. So it's like, well, there is that. So there's this combination of, and it's like, I was listening to, who was JD Vance? Yeah, I was listening to JD Vance, who I generally like. I generally like JD Vance. He's a smart guy, and I listened to his first book, not Hillbilly Elegy, his second book. I listened to that, and it was actually quite good. And he's a pretty sharp guy. But some of the conclusions that he draws, because people in the modern era, I think, just go overboard on whatever they pick. And Vance is one of them. And I mean, the ultimate example again is the poster boy that I'm watching these days, Hassan Piker, who's like, you got to ban everybody, and he puts the various flags of terrorist organizations behind him, and 9/12 is the paper that he's got on his desk for celebrating the 9/11, all that kind of stuff. So it's so it is a dangerous time in that regard, that our institutions have failed us. At the same time, we're still the cleanest dirty shirt in the dirty shirt drawer, so to speak. So it's
yeah. Well, I think that what you were saying a couple minutes ago about, governments all do bad things.
Yeah.
That's like a foundational principle of our Constitution, which limits what the government can do. That's the idea
Yeah, that was supposed to be exactly.
Constitution is to limit the government, not to
Yeah.
grant the people rights, to limit the government's
Totally.
actions.
Yep.
And that's of course been completely upended, and that's not broadly how it's viewed anymore.
Yeah.
At all.
Oh no, that's not popular. I mean, what's popular now is and this is the thing about, there's a lot of anti-capitalism out there in the Hassan Pikers of the world and such. And this is the thing about how economic systems work as well. All these things get corrupted by human nature. Capitalism on its own tends to allow guys like you and me to start businesses, which is really cool. But when it turns into crony capitalism, and when it turns into regulatory capture, where Mark Zuckerberg of the world, and I don't think Mark Zuckerberg is Satan incarnate, but some of these big rich people have indeed used regulatory capture to smooth the way for their businesses at the expense of small businesses like us and others. And so that's and being able to have enough discernment in today's climate to understand what's the difference between the system and the corruption of the system. It's just the same thing with looking at the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, that are both anti-slavery documents, but nevertheless, George Washington held slaves and felt bad about it, but he still held slaves. Thomas Jefferson, and slavery didn't actually disappear until, another 70 years after that. So there's systems, but nobody ever lives up. It's just like people don't live up to their own values all the time. Nobody ever does. Right. I mean, we try, we try, but we don't always do it. And so it's kind of being able to have that level of discernment in today's era is important, because otherwise you just get depressed, and think there's no hope.
Yeah, I think that the more loftier values that people aspire to are supplanted by more sinister and deeper rooted values like immediate gratification and maintaining and building status.
Yeah. Well, and also I think it's the other thing I think that happens, and it's legit. It's legit that, it's a legitimate observation. It's not legit, but when people see big corporations, or when they see, for instance, the president selling access to his Truth Social posts, and they see that kind of corruption, which, by the way, he got sued on that, so that's worth talking about. When people see that type of thing, then they think very naturally, well, okay, well, why should I obey the rules when the most powerful people don't, and when the majority in the populace doesn't? I think I told you the story some years ago, but it bears repeating. It was somebody in an association that I'm a part of, and she and I were talking about one of the things that drives me nuts in Washington, and that is all the people that drop refrigerators and couches on the side of the road, and garbage on the side of the road. And it just, I mean, I just want to park my car and sit there with my HK and wait for somebody to do that, and just shoot them in the butt. I wouldn't kill them. But
You meant
the
an air gun, not an actual
yes, an air gun. That's what I meant. My
yeah,
Daisy. I meant my
yeah,
Daisy. I meant my Daisy. I'm sorry. I meant my
yeah. I
Daisy.
think you misspoke there.
Yeah, yeah,
You meant your
I
air
misspoke.
rifle.
Yeah, hopefully nobody come knocking on the door. But I was telling her about this, and she said, "Oh yeah, that drives me nuts." And then she had this look on her face. She was kind of looking around a little bit, and she said, "You know, I have to tell you something." And I said, "What?" And she said, "I caught my husband doing that the other day." And I'm like, "What?" And it's like, I know her husband. I know her, and she said, "Yeah, yeah." And I chewed him out for it, and he said, "But you know, everybody else is doing it, and so why should
Yeah.
I? You know, why should I obey the law? Why should I be a good citizen when I drive down this road every day?" I mean, yeah, I get it. I totally get it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I think that's where revolutions are born from, is
Yeah,
people just
sure.
saying like I'm not going to follow the rules anymore.
Yep.
Um and real quick, I know we've kind of talked around this before, but and I don't proclaim to have any solutions. I have ideas on what success could look like or what failure looks like, but I don't have enough intimate knowledge of how the governmental systems work in the real world. I
Sure.
forget what the papers say, like the real way
Sure.
things work. I don't have
Yeah.
enough knowledge that to be able to formulate any kind of plan. But it does seem to me that the idea of a free market system, capitalism, whatever you want to call it, was fan freaking tastic in the 1700s and
Sure.
1800s. And it wasn't until maybe the oil barons or whatever the first megalopoly, whatever. I
Sure.
guess I'm guessing it's probably oil. I would be the first like
Well,
thing they just.
railroads. Railroads.
Oh yeah, steel and railroads
Yeah.
before those two for sure. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so banking has been around forever, so that's always been kind of a thing. Steel,
Yep.
railroads, oil. There's probably a couple others. And now
Sure.
in the technological age, it's largely about that
Yep.
military things. But before those things were uh, common,
Yeah.
there was no risk of a company becoming more powerful than a nation. Exceptions would be the Dutch East India Company. I
Sure.
guess they were a
Yeah.
shipping magnate that they'd be an exception, but they're like a once in 500 years company, so it
Yeah.
wasn't prevailing.
Hmm.
But now that we have these industries that are just so massive, and these
Yeah.
individual companies become more powerful than countries, than
Yeah.
nations, powerful nations. I don't mean like Somaliland. I mean
Right.
like powerful nations.
Yeah.
I don't think we're prepared to deal with that. And I
Yeah.
do think that we shouldn't have people with such influence,
Yeah.
often through money, but not limited to just money.
Right.
They shouldn't
Hmm.
have the influence to just dominate how things are. I
Right.
do think that's a legitimate problem. And
Sure.
oftentimes that manifests through building a lucrative business through whatever means,
Yeah.
sometimes legit and sometimes more nefarious.
Yep.
I do think we have to address that. And
Yeah.
I don't mean like in capitalism. I don't think that's the
Right.
solution. I believe you're going to I believe you have those companies in socialist and communist countries, just like you do in free
Oh,
market
sure.
countries.
Well, then it's the government that
Uh,
has that. Somebody
yeah,
has it.
yeah, right. But I do think that's something that is going
Yeah.
to have to be addressed. And again, I don't know what
Yeah.
the solution is. And we have
Well,
monopoly rules that they kind of sort of seem to fit when it suits certain
but
people, and many times they don't
that
seem to
is what it
fit.
is, though. I mean, I think you just hit it on the head. I think it's when we stopped limiting monopolies, you know, and that's in relatively recent times. I mean, there's always been monopolies. There's always been illegal monopolies. I mean, so you could look at the
Yeah,
robber barons, and you can look at the Industrial Revolution, and you know, I mean, there's a lot of that throughout history. So it's not even just currently, but in current times, I really do think it comes down to not preventing unnatural monopolies from existing, which we could have done, which would have, and now we still could do. I mean, you know, back in the 80s, we broke up Ma Bell. You remember that? It was like,
yeah,
now everything was bad. It got worse for a little while, and then it got better. And that's how that happens when you break those things up. But I think today, the reason that we have that undue focus of power is because somebody gets legitimately rich. They use that for regulatory capture and to prevent the monopoly that they are then attempting to form. And really in the modern era, in the technology age, I think probably the linchpin of that was Facebook acquiring Instagram. and there's evidence, there's plenty of actual evidence from Facebook internal memos that like Mark Zuckerberg said, yeah, we got to buy them because people like it better than they like Facebook. Well, that is a monopolist, that is a blatantly illegal monopolistic statement that, and I believe it's true from what I understand, that's an actual thing that is on the record. It's not some kind of, wackadoodle thing out there. When that started to happen, and when monopolies were allowed to form that way, then, Katie barred the door. Then, you can, and we have that in the drug manufacturing area. We have that in so many different industries that unless we get that under control, it's not going to change.
Well, look at the Mag 7. Google, who's bought, countless companies for billions of dollars each.
Yep.
Microsoft, same thing. They bought, and I remember Microsoft getting sued for some kind of antitrust thing. I don't remember the outcome. I don't remember what was the details, but like I want to say late 90s or 2010, somewhere in that range. There was something. Nvidia, who replaced Enron on the S&P 500, by the way. If you, it's a little fun trivia fact for you. I'm sure that they had acquisitions along the way. I don't know the particulars of Nvidia, but they had acquisitions along the way. I'm sure, like all these companies do. And it's just we for whatever reason we've decided it's not something we're going to pursue, and now we do in fact have this situation where a very small pool of people have way outsized influence and guidance, if you want to be kind and call it that, direction, I would say is probably a more appropriate way to say it. And I just think you can only do that stuff for so long, a la the fourth turning, but before people just say this is nonsense and I'm going to dump my refrigerator. But they're not talking about dumping refrigerator, they're talking about something more
more extreme. Well, and I think you can trace that to how do they get away with this? It's the same way that politicians get incredibly rich going to Washington D.C. who were not rich when they went there, I mean, there's a politician who's rich before, there's plenty of stuff that President Trump has done that I completely disagree with and I think is Looney Tunes these days, but at least the dude was rich before he got there. Now there's lots of things that now at least JD Vance was rich before he went to DC. So there's those. Now I'm grasping at straws now because there's not too many ones that you can. But Scott Bessent, at least Scott Bessent was rich before he went there, right?
Well, I think that the thing that you're hinting at is, in order to maintain those things, you must have representatives with integrity. Yeah, and I don't think we have people with the same kind of integrity they had in 1952.
Yes, I just totally agree. Totally agree. Yeah, totally agree. Now,
so there's a flip. Go ahead, Dave. Go ahead.
Well, now the question. Now the thing you have to then determine, like for me, what I have to determine is I have to determine, because all of that is 100% true. There's a lack of integrity. There's monopolistic power. There is financial corruption. We haven't talked about, Nvidia loaning money to its customers so that it can buy its own products, which is, it's what kind of racket is that? Nvidia makes great products and they throw off hundreds of billions of dollars, but they're doing this circular financing scheme, which is like, how can anybody do this? So you got all those things. Then you have to determine you're either going to become a socialist or because, that's a natural result of that. I can understand people who turn to socialism because of that. They say, well, the system's corrupt. I'm going to go this way. It can't be any worse than what we got. Or you're going to become, depressive. Or the other thing is you got to say, well, the principles are still there. They're buried deeply. And now we got to fight for these principles to overtake the evil that's in the world now when the whole thing comes collapsing down. So that's my sermon.
That we've talked over the last couple of weeks about. Well, I talked about how I have a much better understanding of why people are gravitating towards socialism than I did before. Yep. Just because just evidence is everywhere, like something is broken. Yep. And I think that free market representatives, widely regarded, Republicans are supposed to be that. I don't think many of them are sincere about that. I think they are there to get paid just as much as any communist would be. Yep. But even let's just assume that they have good intentions, which I'm stretching to grant that. But let's just have this conversation as if they have a real sales and marketing problem. And the sales and marketing problem is socialism. They just say, You look at all this stuff that you're not getting, and you can get all this stuff.
Totally.
You can
Yes.
get free
Yep.
stuff, right? That's a great pitch. What's the no? Let's maintain the free market. What's the pitch there?
Yeah.
Well, our country was founded upon these ideals, and it kind of stops there.
Yeah. No doubt.
Well, actually, that's not true. Then they say, show me a successful socialism, which again, I agree with all that stuff.
Sure.
I totally agree that I don't agree if that's the right method.
Yep.
But their two main talking points are this is what we started as, and it's failed everywhere else. But they're not offering anything of substance.
Right.
They're not offering anything with meaning. They're not offering anything that you can look around and see it working in some way.
Yeah.
People know people getting free stuff.
Yep.
Everyone knows people getting free stuff.
Exactly.
Socialism. They get it.
Yep. That's exactly right. Here. Yeah, no, this is exactly right. If everybody's getting free stuff, and especially if the rich people are getting free stuff, I want mine. Totally understand. Completely understand.
Everyone's getting free stuff except for the taxpayer. Mm-hmm. Everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Exactly right.
We covered that a couple weeks ago, so I won't go into detail. So on the flip side of all this, so I had a few minutes today to and when I say a few minutes, I mean like literally like 6 minutes to do a little bit of research because I saw this headline. And at first I was like, I don't know about that. And then I asked Grok to fact check it, and it didn't find anything that was terribly out of whack as far as the claim. But before I get to the claim, let me give you a little bit of backstory so we can have some contrast here. What do you remember, if anything, about the California high-speed rail project?
Oh, the one that like ended in between Bakersfield, never went anywhere?
Yeah. So here's the original pitch. The original pitch in 2008, $33 billion.
Yeah.
And there's a range, 33 billion to 45 billion for a San Francisco to LA system.
Right.
Timeline, you're gonna love this, Dave. Timeline, completion by around 2020 or shortly thereafter. Promise was true high-speed rail up to 220 miles an hour, linking the state's major metro areas in under 3 hours, funded partly by $10 billion in state bonds plus expected federal and private money. Okay, now the reality. So far they've spent 15 to 18 billion. Now they've dialed it back, as you said. Now it's the Central Valley, which is Merced to Bakersfield, which is around 162 miles. The cost is around for that segment. So they've spent 15 to 18. Cost for that segment is now earmarked at around 35 to 36 billion. Full phase San Francisco to LA is now 126 billion is the estimates, and operational it looks like somewhere around late or mid 2030s or even as late as 2040. All right. So we got that going on. And then I was like, okay, well, I asked Grog, give me some other examples of this. I remember something about around 2020 is what I thought it was. It said I got the timeline a little bit wrong, but there was this big push. We were going to have nationwide high-speed charging system, our stations, right? Do you remember that? I think
EV charging stations. Yeah.
Okay. So, so I was early on the timeline. It was 2021, not 2020. $7.5 billion was the EV charging push for a national network. Yada yada yada. I'll just skim ahead. They completed 7 by 2024. So at the time of the election-ish, they'd completed 7 in the entire country for their $7.5 billion. What they were going to spend. I'm not saying they spent $7.5 billion on those 7 stations. And then you don't have to look very hard to find these things, is my point. Okay, contrast this with this headline, Dave. On January 1st, 2024, there were 440 flock cameras in the United States. 32 months later, there's 129,000. In 32 months. Okay, so let's break this down. In the first 2 cases, big claims, we're selling the people on this. This is going to be awesome.
Yep.
And then they completely fail, of course.
Yep.
On the flock camera thing, no sales pitch.
Right.
No even disclosure that it's happening.
Yep.
And what do you know? Boom! Like overnight, we got 129,000 of these things in less than 3 years.
Exactly.
Now, one of these things, one category of these things benefits the average citizen.
Right.
And one you can make a pretty compelling argument, not so much.
No, exactly. Only benefits the powerful.
Not benefit the citizen gets done in a blistering pace.
Exactly. Yeah. So we haven't lost our ability to do these things. We've just lost our ability to do them the way that the government says that they're going to do them and the way the politicians pitch it. Yes.
Wait, we can get shit done. We can't get shit done that benefits citizens, though.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
that is out.
Exactly right. Yep. Nope. That's exactly right. So I guess you can ratchet that up to where follow the money. Where's the money and who benefits from the surveillance of the
Yeah.
American citizen? Yeah.
Now,
That's
to be
who
fair,
benefits.
I'm not saying it's as easy to put up, 100,000 flock cameras as building a railway through the entire state of California,
Sure.
half of
Sure.
California. I get the magnitude difference.
Sure.
I don't get the grit and diligence and effort, consistency, all the things that
Sure.
required to put up flock cameras.
Right.
129,000 those requires all those things.
You
And it
bet.
would take the same things for the high speed rail, but
Absolutely.
the incentive structure is a little bit different, and the benefit of
Yeah.
who's getting the benefits is much different between the two.
Yeah.
And one we just fall flat, the other one we crush it. It's an
And
interesting
that's the bottom line.
dichotomy.
And that's why, that's why people long for the days when we like the interstate highway system that we built in the 50s and 60s. I mean, just amazing, amazing engineering feats. Hoover Dam, I mean, you complain about FDR and certainly there's a bunch of stuff that FDR did that was, or believed that was, wackadoodle, but he did build Hoover Dam. And, there have been some things that have been done on the government dime that have been pretty doggone successful. So we just haven't. It just depends on where the incentive structure is, just as you said.
But not since like 1960.
Yeah,
I'm being legitimate here. I'm not being sarcastic. So I'm probably wrong, but like a Hoover Dam like project, that magnitude, or like an interstate highway system, I don't know, 60s, 70s, somewhere in there. Certainly before the 70s, because everything we made in the 70s sucked. Like,
the 70s was
anything in the 70s.
Yeah, Pintos and Mustang twos. Yes.
Yeah. But these big scale projects, I mean, there's a bridge not too far from your house, the White River Bridge between Enumclaw, Washington and Buckley, Washington,
Mm-hmm.
two little small towns. That bridge is all but falling apart.
Yep.
They had to close it last year for like 10 months or something like that.
Yep.
I think it was built in the 30s. It's a 2-lane bridge built in the 30s.
Yep.
We don't have the ability or will to replace that one little bridge that carries 30,000 cars a day or whatever it was.
Yeah. No, I would say it died with the moon landing. I think that's the last major thing.
That's probably pretty fair.
I think that's when it basically died with the moon landing. And since then, I mean, all the melees of the 70s and we lost our way in the 70s are just basically a lost time. I remember, I think of the 70s and I think of olive drab green. Yeah, everything did in the 70s. So it's like that, but people remember what we used to be able to do, and they see what we can't do now, and we see then the wealth accruing to the monopolistic powers, and no wonder people are either losing hope or turning to alternative systems, and especially when you look at the economy and the average price of like around here, the average price of a home, just a basic Rambler or a townhome is $500,000, and who can afford that? Who can afford it?
Yeah.
So that's a.
Well, I guess my point is we still have the capacity to get things done when there's the right incentive. But the things that the population seems to care about, for whatever reason, doesn't have that incentive, it appears.
Yeah. No, there's no incentive because the politicians don't have to report to us. They have to report to the people that fund their wealthy wealth accumulation. I mean, that's the bottom line.
All right. Well, take us out on a high note, Dave. Give us something good.
What's a good high note? Well, let's see.
Well, I mean, I gave you permission to go get your weed now. You can go get your cannabis and not be. You can even probably take it across the county line or something.
Yeah, there is that. I mean, I suppose the one good thing I think when society's physical plant collapses, when the rest of the structures collapse, is people do become more interested in non-physical things, in other words, spiritual things. So I do think one of the things that you find happening right now, there's a number of resurgences of men going to Catholic churches and men going to Protestant churches. It used to be mostly a female thing going to church, but there's a lot of kind of resurgence of that, and I think a lot of that's the result of what we see in terms of the world failing us. The postmodernism has failed us, and all of the the promise of physical wealth has failed us. And so I think that's I think a positive benefit, which ultimately I think is going to lead to what we find in the fourth turning, transition over to the first turning, is the setup for the next spiritual revival, which, at the end of the day, physical stuff can only take you so far anyway. So I do think that's a potentially positive outcome of all this. Now, it's not universal. None of these things. The collapse is not universal, and the rebuilding is not universal. It's always a mixed bag. That's just human nature and life on planet Earth. But it seems to me that some of these things that I'm seeing and hearing, especially among unlikely groups, I mean, you find people that are unlikely people to be promoting more traditional values are now promoting more traditional values, and so I think there's something to be said for that part of the time that we live in.
Yeah, similar, not exactly the same thing, but adjacent or similar. I saw a headline yesterday that loneliness is more dangerous than smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
Yeah,
That was the
yeah,
claim. Now, I
yeah,
don't know if it's true or not. Who knows? But I do know that in this era, the social media era, like people have become very isolated, and especially with COVID and the lockdowns, like that
yeah.
changed a lot of behavior, just patterns of behavior of like getting out and doing things like bowling or whatever it is, right?
Yep.
Um, I do think we've become more isolated as individuals,
Yes.
and I do think that it's becoming a thing that people are aware of. Kind of like like in the 70s or whatever, they talked about smoking when they started like being honest about the unhealthy
Oh yeah,
components of
smoking
smoking.
cigarettes, right? Yeah.
Right. And then moved on to like sitting is worse than smoking. And now this loneliness thing. Now, as corny as some of those things, like when the government does these campaigns, they're always corny and
Yeah.
like the more you know, kind of, whatever silly
Right.
ways. But people don't smoke as much now.
Yeah.
People don't drink as much now.
Yep.
Do exercise probably more now than average on average. Not
Yep.
again, nothing. None of this stuff is 100%. And I do think, along with the spiritual thing you're talking about, and I absolutely agree with you that people are going to come to the realization more so that the color of my house and how many square feet my house is, that stuff is going to be less important 10 years from now than it
Right.
is today. I do believe that.
Yep.
But I also think there's going to be a social revival.
Yes.
I mean, it's not that far. I mean, I remember I grew up in Wyoming and Kansas and places like that.
Hmm.
I was alive when they still had Saturday night dances at barns.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And that was a thing that people went to. It was
Yeah.
it was a big social event. And they went to church on Sunday and they had the pies afterwards and
Yep.
the picnics and all that kind of stuff. That is such a far gone thing.
Right.
I do think we will move back towards it. I think we kind of hit what are the opposite of apexes? I can't remember the word for it, but um, we're kind of towards the bottom of that. I
Yes.
do think we will rebound and kind of become more social, more spiritual,
Yeah.
more about I don't mean relationships in a weird way, but like building meaningful relationships. I think I think there is going to be a rebound in that because it's
Yeah.
been gone for a decade plus now.
Well, and you see that now. You see that happening now with even in just some small ways. You see people, moving away from not enough are moving away from social media, but people are moving towards getting together and actually discovering the joy of getting together with your friends and playing a card game or something like that. There's a resurgence of a number of these things that are like, wonder why that's happening. Well, it's because people have felt, we've got access to everybody in the world, and we're still got this epidemic of loneliness and depression and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Well, maybe if we, go over to our brother's house and play a game with our nieces and nephews, we'll be happier. That's happening. And so I think those things are direct results of this kind of melees that we brought upon ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, that damn technology, man.
Yep,
All
that's
right.
it.
Well, as Dave said in the beginning, if we say anything especially right or wrong as we're trying to explain to future generations what it's like to live through this crazy moment in time, by all means, let us know what you think we got right and what we didn't. You can do that at unsilentpodcast.com, or Rumble has a great comment section. Until next week, this is Dave and Brian signing off.
See you next week.
Do you want to be unsilent? Make your voice heard on our social media channels and share where you think we got it right or wrong. Go to unsilentpodcast.com for social links so you can join the discussion.